The council chamber stretched wide like a cathedral made of crystal and light. Hundreds of alien species sat in their designated seats watching the human ambassador with eyes that showed no respect. Some had scales that shimmered under the bright lights. Others had skin that looked like smooth stone or rough bark. A few breathed gases that humans would find poisonous, sitting in special sealed boxes that kept their atmosphere separate from everyone else. Hyun stood at the center of it all. He wore simple gray robes that made him look humble and weak. His black hair was cut short and neat. His face showed no emotion as he bowed low to the council members above him. The bow went lower than necessary. It was the bow of someone who knew they had no power. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," Hyun said in a soft voice, "Earth thanks you for this opportunity to speak. We are young and know very little about the galaxy. We hope to learn from your ancient wisdom." A creature that looked like a giant reptile leaned forward. Its scales were deep red and its eyes glowed yellow in the dim light. This was Chancellor Vorn, leader of the Vrakos Empire. The Vrakos had ruled part of the galaxy for 10,000 years. They believed they were better than everyone else. "Human," Vorn said with a voice that sounded like grinding rocks, "your world has been observed for 50 of your years. We have seen your wars, your pollution, your chaos. You are children playing with dangerous toys. The Council has decided that Earth needs guidance." "Strong guidance," Hyun bowed again. "We would welcome any wisdom the Council wishes to share." Another alien spoke up. This one looked like a giant insect with multiple eyes and clicking mandibles. It was Ambassador Krill of the Quilmar Hive. "Guidance is not enough," Krill clicked. "Your species expands too quickly. You breed without control. You consume resources like locusts." The Council voted. "Earth must submit to protective governance. We will manage your population. We will control your expansion. We will decide what technology you may have." The other council members made sounds of agreement, chirps, growls, electronic buzzes. They all agreed that humans were a problem that needed to be controlled. Hyun looked down at the floor. He let his shoulders slump a little as if the weight of the news made him sad and tired. "The people of Earth hope to join the galactic community as equals," he said quietly. "But we understand we are young. If the Council believes this is necessary, we will consider your terms. May we have time to discuss this with our government?" Vorn laughed. It was a terrible sound like stones breaking. "You may have 1 Earth year to prepare. Then our ships will arrive to begin the transition. You will surrender control of your military, your factories, and your government. Resistance will not be tolerated. Do you understand?" "I understand," Hyun said. He bowed one more time, very low, and then walked out of the chamber. His footsteps echoed in the huge space. Behind him, the council members talked among themselves about how easy it would be to control the humans. What they did not see was the small smile on Hyun's face as he left the chamber. What they did not know was that this was exactly what Earth wanted. 3 days later, Hyun was back on Earth. He stood in a room deep underground, surrounded by concrete and steel. The room had no windows. The walls were covered with screens showing maps of space, lists of ships, and tactical data. This was the real headquarters of Earth's defense system. General Taeyang stood at the head of a long table. He was a tall man with gray hair cut military short. His uniform was dark blue with silver stars on the shoulders. Scars marked his face, old wounds from battles the galaxy knew nothing about. His eyes were sharp and cold as he looked at the screens around them. 1 year, Taeyang said. "They gave us 1 year." "More time than we expected," replied a woman sitting at the table. This was Bora, Earth's chief scientist. She wore a white coat over casual clothes. Her hair was pulled back in a simple tail. Glasses sat on her nose even though she could have fixed her eyes with surgery. She liked how glasses made her look less threatening. "We can do a lot with 1 year." Hyun took his seat at the table. He pulled off the gray robes and underneath wore a simple black uniform. "They believe we are helpless," he said. Vorn actually laughed when I asked for time. "Krill said we breed like insects. They think we are nothing." "Good," Taeyang said. The word was sharp and final. "Let them think that." "How many other species have they done this to?" 17 that we know of," said another man at the table. This was Minho, a captain in Earth's secret space navy. He was younger than the others with quick eyes that missed nothing. "The Vrakos and Quilmar control most of the council. When they find a new species, they offer protection. If the species refuses, they get crushed. If they accept, they become slaves. It is a good system for them. They have used it for thousands of years. Until now, Bora said softly. She touched a screen and images appeared in the air above the table. They showed ships that looked like mining vessels and cargo haulers. These are our carriers. The Council thinks they are civilian ships. They have no idea each one carries enough firepower to destroy a planet. More images appeared. Space stations that looked like research labs. These are our weapons platforms. The Council thinks we study stars and planets. They do not know each station has railguns that can shoot through a battleship. Then came images of colonies on Mars, on the moons of Jupiter, on asteroids throughout the solar system. These are our military bases. The Council thinks they are small farming communities. They have never looked close enough to see the fortifications, the weapons factories, the training centers. Taeyang walked around the table, studying each image. We have been preparing for this since we first detected their scout ship 70 years ago. We knew they would come. We knew what they would want. So we gave them what they expected to see, a young, chaotic, helpless species. While we built an army, Hyun finished. Not just an army, Bora corrected. We built weapons they have never seen. We studied their technology from the ships they sent to watch us. We learned their weaknesses. Every species in the Council evolved on low-gravity worlds. They are fragile, slow. They have never fought anyone like us. Minho stood and pointed at a star map. Our stealth ships are already in position around their major systems. They think we have no faster-than-light travel. They have no idea we have been watching them just as they watched us. We know where their shipyards are. We know where their military bases are. We know where their leaders live. But we wait, Taeyang said firmly. We let them come here. We let them think they have won. And when they are committed, when their fleets are deep in our space, when they believe Earth is theirs, then we show them what humans really are. The others nodded. They had been planning this for decades. Some of them had spent their entire careers preparing for this moment. They had built weapons in secret. They had trained soldiers who pretended to be farmers and miners. They had created a military that existed in the shadows, invisible to the galaxy that thought it ruled everything. 1 year, Hyun said again. Then they come. 1 year, Taeyang agreed. Then we teach the galaxy a lesson it will never forget. In orbit around Earth, satellites watched the stars. They looked like weather monitors and communication arrays, but hidden inside each one were sensors and weapons. They tracked every ship that came near human space. They recorded every transmission the Council sent. They gathered data on every species, every weapon, every tactic the galactic powers used. Earth looked helpless. Earth acted weak, but Earth was the most dangerous thing in the galaxy, and soon the galaxy would learn that truth in the worst possible way. The countdown had begun. The year passed quickly. On the surface, Earth seemed to be preparing for its new role as a Council protectorate. Human leaders gave speeches about cooperation and learning from older, wiser species. News programs showed people building welcome centers for the Council's arrival. Children in schools learned the languages of the Vrakos and Quilmar. Everything looked peaceful and ready. But deep underground, in bases hidden inside mountains and beneath oceans, Earth's real work continued. Soldiers trained day and night. Factories built weapons that would never appear on any official report. Scientists tested technologies that the Council did not know existed. Earth was preparing for war, but the galaxy saw only a planet getting ready to surrender. Chancellor Vorn watched reports from his homeworld. He sat in a chamber carved from black stone, surrounded by servants and guards. Screens showed him images of Earth, humans building landing pads, humans learning Vrakos customs, humans looking afraid and uncertain. They are almost eager to submit, Vorn said to his advisor, a younger Vrakos named Kresh. I expected more resistance, at least some protests. They are weak, Kresh replied. We have studied their history. They fight each other over small things, but when faced with a greater power, they bow. It is their nature. Vorn nodded slowly. His yellow eyes studied the screens. Perhaps. But I want no mistakes. Send the Third Fleet, 1,000 ships. Enough to crush any resistance before it starts. I want the humans to see our power and know that defiance is impossible. As you command, Kresh said, bowing. Orders went out across the Vrakos Empire. Ships gathered from dozens of systems. The Third Fleet was one of the largest military forces the Vrakos had ever assembled. It included massive battleships that could destroy cities from orbit, carrier vessels that held thousands of fighters, troop ships loaded with soldiers ready to occupy a planet, supply ships carrying everything needed for a long occupation. The commander of the Third Fleet was Admiral Vex, a decorated warrior who had conquered 7 systems in his career. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, a vessel called the Crushing Fang, and looked at the fleet assembled around him. It was beautiful and terrible, the greatest display of power the galaxy had seen in a generation. Set course for the human system, Vex ordered. Standard approach. We will show them our strength before we even arrive. The fleet jumped into faster-than-light travel. They would arrive at Earth in 10 days. 10 days for the humans to see them coming. 10 days to understand that resistance was futile. 10 days to accept their fate. On Earth, Admiral Jiwan received the report. She stood in the command center, the same underground facility where Taiyang had spoken a year ago. Screens showed the Vrakos fleet moving toward them. Computers calculated their speed, their route, their estimated arrival time. Jiwan was a small woman with gray streaks in her black hair. She had fought in 3 wars that the galaxy knew nothing about. Earth's wars, wars between nations before humanity united against the common threat from space. She knew war. She knew when to fight and when to wait. They are coming, she said to the officers around her. 1,000 ships. They want us to see them. They want us to be afraid. Are we ready? Asked Minho. He stood beside her, now wearing the uniform of a carrier captain. His ship, the Hidden Strike, waited in orbit disguised as a mining vessel. It was one of 50 carriers waiting in Earth's system, all invisible to Vrakos sensors. We are ready, Jiwan confirmed. She touched a control and a message appeared on every screen in the room. It was the authorization code they had been waiting for. The code that meant all pretense could end. The code that meant Earth could stop pretending to be helpless. Send the message to all units, Jiwan ordered. Operation Thunder is approved. All ships, all bases, all weapons are now active. Rules of engagement are free. Show no mercy. The message spread across Earth's military network. Soldiers in hidden bases received their orders. Ships in orbit powered up weapon systems that had been dormant for years. Platforms scattered throughout the solar system began final preparations. Earth was done hiding. In the council chamber, Ambassador Krill of the Quilmar received a transmission. It was from Earth. A simple message broadcast on all frequencies. The message had only 5 words. You were warned. Goodbye. Krill's multiple eyes blinked in confusion. Warned about what? The humans had shown nothing but submission. Their ambassador had been respectful and afraid. Their planet had prepared for council rule. What warning? Then the reports started coming in. Strange signals from the human system. Power readings that made no sense. Energy spikes from locations that should be empty space. Ships appearing on sensors where no ships should be. Get me Chancellor Vorn. Krill clicked urgently. But Vorn was already seeing the same reports. His yellow eyes widened as he read the data. The human system was lighting up like a star going nova. Power readings were off the scale. What had they missed? What had the humans hidden? Contact Admiral Vex, Vorn ordered. Tell him to be cautious. Something is wrong. The message was sent, but it would take time to reach the fleet in faster-than-light travel. Time the humans would not give them. The Third Fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the human solar system. Admiral Vex expected to see a quiet system. Some planets, some satellites, maybe a few primitive defense platforms. What he saw instead made his blood run cold. The entire system was armed. Space stations that should have been communication arrays were now revealed as weapons platforms. Asteroids were opening to show hidden military bases. Ships that had looked like civilian vessels were transforming. Armor plating sliding into place, weapons extending from hidden compartments. Battle stations, Vex roared. All ships, defensive formation. But it was too late. The humans had been waiting for them to arrive at exactly this spot. They had calculated the jump point. They had prepared the trap. And now they sprang it. Minho stood on the bridge of the Hidden Strike as it completed its transformation. The mining vessel vanished, replaced by a sleek carrier bristling with weapons. Around him, 49 other carriers did the same. They had been hiding in plain sight, pretending to be civilian ships doing civilian work. Now they showed their true purpose. Launch all fighters, Minho ordered calmly. Target the enemy vanguard. Fire when ready. Thousands of fighters poured out of the carriers. They were smaller than Vrakos fighters, but faster. much faster. They moved with precision and speed that shocked the enemy pilots. Within minutes, the front line of the Third Fleet was in chaos, but the fighters were just the beginning. The weapons platforms around Earth opened fire. Railguns that could accelerate projectiles to impossible speeds sent solid slugs of metal tearing through Vrakos shields. The shields were designed to stop energy weapons. They did almost nothing against kinetic weapons traveling at a significant fraction of light speed. Ships exploded. Battleships that had seemed invincible were torn apart by impacts that released more energy than nuclear weapons. Carrier vessels broke in half, spilling fighters and crew into space. Troop ships tried to turn and run but found their escape routes blocked by human ships that had appeared behind them. Admiral Vex watched his fleet die. He had commanded 1,000 ships 10 minutes ago. Now he had less than 800 and the number was dropping fast. His crew shouted reports at him. Damage reports, casualty reports, warnings about weapon systems that should not exist. How? Vex whispered.
How do they have this technology?
A railgun slug punched through the crushing Fangs bridge. It happened so fast that Vex did not even have time to scream. The slug entered through the forward viewport and exited through the rear of the ship, passing through 3 decks and killing everyone in its path. The flagship's reactor went critical seconds later. The explosion took out 5 nearby ships. The Third Fleet tried to fight back. Their energy weapons hit human shields and did some damage. They destroyed some fighters and damaged a few carriers. But for every human ship they hurt, they lost 10 of their own. The battle was not even close to fair. Back in the council chamber, Vorn and Krill watched the reports come in. The Third Fleet was being massacred. Humanity's defenses were far beyond anything they had expected. The humans had not just hidden weapons, they had hidden an entire military-industrial complex. They had technology that should have taken thousands of years to develop. "This is impossible," Vorn said. His voice shook. "They were primitives. We watched them. We studied them. They deceived us," Krill clicked. "They showed us what we wanted to see. While we watched, they prepared. All this time they were preparing." A new message came from Earth. It was Ambassador Hyun. He no longer wore humble robes. He wore a military uniform. His face showed no fear. Instead, he smiled. "Chancellor Vorn, Ambassador Krill, you declared that Earth needed protection. You said we were too dangerous to be left alone. You were right. We are dangerous. But not to ourselves. We are dangerous to anyone who threatens us. Your fleet is dying. Your soldiers are dying. And this is just the beginning. Earth rejects the Council's authority. We will not bow. We will not submit. And if you send more fleets, we will destroy them too. Consider this your only warning." The transmission ended. Vorn stared at the empty screen. His empire had not been challenged in 5,000 years. His fleets had conquered countless worlds. The remains of the Third Fleet limped away from Earth's solar system. Of the 1,000 ships that had arrived, only 200 escaped. They carried stories of impossible weapons and ruthless human tactics. They told of shields that absorbed energy weapons like they were nothing. They described human pilots who moved faster than any living thing should be able to move. They spoke of a prepared enemy that had been waiting for exactly this attack. Chancellor Vorn did not want to hear about defeat. He wanted victory. He wanted revenge. Within days of the Third Fleet's destruction, he issued orders that would commit the entire Vrakos Empire to war. 10 fleets would gather. 10,000 ships. Every military asset the Empire possessed. It would take time to assemble such a force, but when it was ready, no power in the galaxy could stand against it. Or so Vorn believed. In the council chamber, other species watched what was happening. The Quilmar pledged their support to the Vrakos. Their hive ships and warrior drones would join the assault. Smaller species, afraid of what would happen if they did not help, also promised ships and soldiers. The Council had never mobilized like this before. It had never needed to. But humanity had challenged the entire galactic order, and the Council would not tolerate that challenge. What the Council did not know was that Earth had been counting on exactly this response. They wanted the Council to commit everything. They wanted the enemy to gather all their forces in one place. It would make what came next so much easier. General Taeyang stood in the command center watching reports from across the galaxy. Human spy satellites and stealth ships had been watching Council movements for decades. Now they watched the great gathering of the Council's military might. Ships from 100 systems converging on assembly points, weapons being loaded, troops being trained. It was the largest military mobilization in galactic history. They are doing exactly what we predicted, Taeyang said to the officers around him. Jiwon stood nearby along with Hyun, Bora, and Minho. They believe overwhelming force will win this war. They do not understand that their greatest strength is actually their greatest weakness. Because they are all gathered together, Jiwon said, in predictable locations. Following standard doctrine, they fight the same way they have fought for thousands of years. And we do not, Hyun added. We learned from watching them. We studied their tactics and their strategies. We know how they think, but they know nothing about how we fight. Bora brought up a map of the galaxy. Red dots showed where council fleets were gathering. Blue dots showed where human forces waited. The blue dots were scattered throughout council space. Small forces in dozens of locations. It did not look like enough to fight 10,000 ships. Operation Sunset begins in 6 hours, Bora said. 20 strike forces will hit 20 targets simultaneously. Shipyards, supply depots, communication hubs. By the time the council realizes what is happening, we will have crippled their ability to support their fleets. And while they scramble to respond to those attacks, Taeyang continued, our main forces will move on the assembly points. We hit them before they finish gathering. We destroy them piecemeal before they can bring their full strength to bear. Minho nodded. His ship, the Hidden Strike, would lead one of the strike forces. My target is the Quilmar shipyards at Hive Prime. Intelligence says they are building new carriers there. We destroy the yards, we slow down their reinforcements. Casualties? Hyun asked. His job as ambassador was over. Now he worked in strategy and planning. We expect losses, Taeyang admitted. This will be real combat, not a turkey shoot like the Third Fleet. The enemy will fight hard to defend their core systems. But our simulations show we can win. Not just win. We can destroy the Council's military power completely. There was silence in the room. What they were planning was not just a battle. It was the complete destruction of the galactic order. The Vrakos and Quilmar had ruled for thousands of years. In one day, humanity would end that rule forever. Are we sure about this? Asked a younger officer. Her name was Somin. She commanded ground forces that would land on enemy worlds. We are starting a war that will kill billions. Once we do this, there is no going back. Taeyang looked at her. His expression was hard. They started this war when they decided Earth would be their slave. They have conquered and enslaved dozens of species. They have killed anyone who refused to bow to them. We are not the villains here. We are ending a system of tyranny that has lasted too long. Yes, there will be casualties. War always has casualties. But when this is over, the galaxy will be free. Somin nodded slowly. She understood. This was not a war of aggression. It was a war of liberation. Humanity was not conquering. They were destroying tyrants. 6 hours, G1 said. All commanders return to your ships. All forces final preparations. We go dark in 5 hours. The council will not know we are coming until it is too late. The officers dispersed. They had trained for this. They had prepared for this. Now it was time to show the galaxy what humanity could really do. Commander Yuna stood on the bridge of the stealth frigate Silent Thunder. Her ship was part of the strike force heading to Hive Prime. Around her, 19 other stealth ships waited in the darkness of space. They were far from any star, hidden in the empty space between systems. The council had no idea they were there. Yuna was young for a ship commander. She had grown up in the space colonies around Mars. She had trained as a Marine before moving to ship command. She knew how to fight up close and personal. That training would be useful today. All ships report ready, her first officer said. His name was Doyun. He was older and more experienced, but he trusted Yuna's instincts. We jump in 4 minutes. Good, Yuna said. She looked at the tactical display. Hive Prime was a massive asteroid that the Quilmar had turned into a shipyard. Thousands of workers built ships there. Dozens of carriers and battleships were under construction. If those ships were completed, they would add significantly to the Council's fleet strength. Yuna's job was to make sure those ships never launched. Remember, Yuna said to her crew, we go in fast and hard. Destroy the construction bays first, then hit the reactor cores. We need to make this yard useless. Secondary targets are the completed ships in dock. If we can destroy them too, even better. Her crew confirmed their understanding. They were ready. They had run this simulation 100 times. Now they would do it for real. Jump in 10 seconds, Do-Yun counted down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, jump. The Silent Thunder and its sister ships entered faster than light travel. The journey to Hive Prime took only seconds. When they emerged, they were right on top of the target. The Quilmar guards were not ready. They were not expecting an attack deep in their own territory. Their sensors picked up the human ships appearing from nowhere, but by the time they sounded the alarm, Yuna's forces were already firing. Missiles streaked across space. They were not conventional missiles. They were kinetic kill vehicles guided by advanced AI. They moved fast enough that point defense systems could not track them. They hit construction bays and exploded inside, tearing apart half-built ships and killing workers by the thousands. "Move to secondary targets," Yuna ordered. "Do-hyun, take your squad and hit the eastern reactor. I will take the western complex." The stealth ships split up. They moved through the asteroid field with precision, dodging defensive fire and destroying targets. The Quilmar tried to respond. Their fighters launched from nearby carriers. Their defense platforms opened fire. But the human ships were too fast, too maneuverable. They danced through the defensive fire like it was not even there. Do-hyun's squad hit the eastern reactor with a spread of plasma torpedoes. The reactor went critical and exploded, destroying 3 construction bays and damaging the asteroid's internal structure. Yuna's squad followed up with their own attack on the western complex. The secondary reactor exploded even bigger than the first. Hive Prime was dying. The shipyard that had built vessels for 1,000 years was being torn apart in minutes. The Quilmar defenders fought desperately, but they were fighting an enemy they did not understand. The humans used tactics that made no sense to them. They took risks that should have gotten them killed. They moved with coordination that seemed impossible without a hive mind. What the Quilmar did not understand was that humanity had trained for exactly this kind of combat. Every pilot in Yuna's force had spent years preparing. They had practiced in simulators that replicated Quilmar defenses perfectly. They knew where every gun would be, where every blind spot existed. They had the advantage of perfect knowledge, gained from decades of spying on the Council. "All primary targets destroyed," Yuna reported. Moving to completed ships, 3 carriers sat in dock fully armed and ready for service. They would have joined the Council's fleet within days. Now they would burn. Yuna's ships hit them with everything they had. Railgun slugs tore through their hulls. Missiles detonated inside their hangar bays. Within minutes, all 3 carriers were drifting wrecks. "Mission complete," Yuna said. "All ships prepare to jump." As her force prepared to leave, Yuna looked at the destruction they had caused. Thousands of Quilmar were dead, years of work destroyed, a critical production facility rendered useless, and this was just one target. Across the galaxy, 19 other strike forces were doing. The Council's gathering fleets were in chaos. News of the attack spread quickly. 20 critical facilities destroyed in a single day, thousands dead, production capacity reduced by half. And worse, no one knew where the humans would strike next. The enemy was everywhere and nowhere. Ships appeared from empty space, destroyed their targets, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Chancellor Vorn sat in his war room surrounded by advisors and military commanders. Reports kept coming in. Each one was worse than the last. The Quilmar had lost their primary shipyard. The Vrakos had lost 3 supply depots. Smaller Council species had lost almost their entire defensive infrastructure. The humans had not just attacked. They had surgically removed the Council's ability to fight a long war. How? Vorn demanded. His claws scraped against his throne. How did they know where to strike? How did they penetrate our space without being detected? No one had a good answer. The truth was too humiliating to admit. Humanity had been spying on them for decades. Those quiet little satellites Earth had launched, supposedly for scientific research, had been watching and listening to everything. Those civilian ships that traveled through Council space, supposedly trading and exploring, had been mapping military installations and recording defense patterns. The Council had been completely transparent to human intelligence while humanity remained a complete mystery to them. "We cannot wait," said Admiral Kresh, who had taken command after Admiral Vex's death. "The fleets are still gathering, but we must attack now. Every day we wait, they destroy more of our capacity to fight." "And if we attack before we are ready?" asked Krill. The Quilmar ambassador had been shaken by the loss of Hive Prime. "They destroyed the 3rd Fleet. They have weapons we do not understand. What if we send our gathered forces and they destroy those too? Then we die with honor," Vorn said coldly. "But I do not believe they can stop 10,000 ships. Yes, they have good technology. Yes, they have surprise on their side. But numbers matter. Mass matters. We will overwhelm them with sheer force." Order all fleets to advance on Earth immediately. We end this now. The orders went out. Across Council space, fleets prepared to move. They were not at full strength. Some ships had been diverted to defend damaged facilities. Some had been destroyed in the raids. But they still numbered more than 8,000 ships. It was still the largest military force in recorded history, and they were all heading toward one target, Earth. In the human command center, alarms sounded. Sensors detected the Council fleets beginning to move. Admiral G1 studied the tactical displays. 8,000 ships, maybe more, all converging on Earth from 3 different directions. It was meant to be overwhelming. It was meant to be unstoppable. They took the bait, G1 said with satisfaction. General, are our forces in position? Taeyang nodded. All main battle groups report ready. We have 600 ships waiting along their approach routes. Another 400 defending Earth itself, plus all the fixed defenses in the solar system. 1,000 ships against 8,000, Hyun observed. Those are bad odds. Only if you fight a traditional battle, Bora said. She brought up a complex tactical display. But we are not going to fight traditionally. We are going to bleed them the entire way. Hit and run attacks, ambushes. Force them to fight in locations we choose. By the time they reach Earth, they will be exhausted and depleted. And then we crush them, Taeyang finished. Captain Junho sat in the cockpit of his fighter. It was a sleek craft, smaller than Council fighters but faster and more agile. Around him, thousands of other fighters waited in their carriers. They were the tip of the spear, the first wave that would hit the approaching enemy fleets. Junho was young. He had never seen combat before Operation Sunset, but he had trained for this his entire adult life. He had spent 10,000 hours in simulators. He knew his ship better than he knew his own body, and he was not afraid. All wings, this is Commander Yuna, a voice said in his helmet. Yuna had been promoted after successfully destroying Hive Prime. Now she commanded the entire fighter wing that would engage the Council's northern fleet. Enemy forces will be in range in 10 minutes. Remember your training.
Stay with your wingman.
Target the capital ships. Let their fighters chase you into our point defense zones. We have the speed advantage. We have better training. We are going to show them why humanity owns the void. Good hunting. Junho checked his weapons. Missiles loaded. Railgun charged. Shields at maximum. He was ready. His wingman, a pilot named Dae-Young, confirmed ready status. They had flown together for 3 years. They knew each other's moves instinctively. Contact, the carrier's controller announced. Enemy fleet dropping out of FTL. Distance 50,000 kilometers. Count 3,000 ships. Composition 1,000 battleships, 1,000 carriers, 1,000 support vessels. Junho's heart beat faster. 3,000 ships. It was a terrifying sight on his sensors. The enemy fleet looked like a wall of metal and energy. How could anyone fight against that? Then he remembered his training. Numbers only mattered if you fought in formation, if you stood still and traded shots. But humanity did not fight that way. They moved. They adapted. They used the enemy's size against them. All fighters launch, Yuna ordered. Junho's fighter shot out of the carrier bay. Around him, 10,000 other fighters did the same. They formed up into squadrons and wings. Then they accelerated toward the enemy fleet. The Council ships saw them coming. They launched their own fighters. Quilmar drones and Vrikos interceptors. Thousands of enemy craft moving to intercept the human attack. It looked like a classic fighter engagement. 2 clouds of small ships meeting in the middle for a massive dogfight. But at the last second, the human fighters scattered. They split into hundreds of small groups and curved around the enemy fighter screen. The Council pilots tried to follow, but the human ships were faster. By the time the enemy fighters turned to pursue, the humans were already hitting the capital ships. Junho and Dae-Young dove on a Vrikos battleship. The ship's point defense opened fire, filling space with energy bolts. Yunyo danced through the fire, his reflexes enhanced by drugs and training. He could see the pattern in the defensive fire. He could predict where the shots would be. He moved his fighter to where the shots were not. His missiles launched. 6 projectiles that curved and weaved toward the battleship. The ship's defenses destroyed 3 of them. But 3 got through. They hit the ship's shield emitters and exploded. The shields flickered and died. Shields down, Junho reported. Going in. He brought his fighter in close, so close he could see details on the battleship's hull. His railgun fired. The hypervelocity rounds punched through armor and exploded inside the ship. He targeted the engines, the weapons batteries, the command deck. Each hit caused secondary explosions. The battleship began to list target damaged, Junho said, moving to next target. All across the battlefield, similar scenes repeated. Human fighters moved too fast for the enemy to track. They coordinated their attacks with precision that seemed impossible. They exploited every weakness in Council ship designs. Weaknesses humanity had identified through decades of study. The Council fleet tried to adapt. They tightened their formations. They increased defensive fire. But this just made them slower and less maneuverable. Human capital ships began entering the battle. Cruisers and destroyers that could take on battleships. They used the same tactics as the fighters. Speed and precision over raw firepower. Admiral Kresh watched his fleet being torn apart. He had started with 3,000 ships. An hour into the battle, he had less than 2,000. The humans were everywhere. They hit his flanks, his rear, his supply train. They destroyed ships faster than he could coordinate a response. "We need to retreat," his second-in-command said. "No," Kresh snarled. "We keep pushing forward. Earth is only 5 more jumps away. We can make it." But with every jump, the humans were waiting. They had sown the route with mines and traps. They ambushed the fleet at every jump point. By the time Kresh's force finally reached Earth's solar system, he had less than 1,000 ships left. He had started with 3,000. 2/3 of his fleet was gone, and Earth's defenses had not even fired yet. Similar stories played out along the other approach routes. The Western Fleet, led by a Quilmar Hive commander, lost half its strength to hit-and-run attacks. The Eastern Fleet ran into a human battle group that simply would not let them pass. They fought a running battle for 3 days before the Council ships finally broke through. But they left hundreds of wrecks behind. When the 3 Council fleets finally converged on Earth, they had started with 8,000 ships. Now they had less than 3,000. They were exhausted. Their supply lines were cut. Their morale was broken. And they still had to face Earth's fixed defenses. Dr. Nari watched from a laboratory on Luna. She was not a soldier. She was a scientist. But her work was just as important to the war effort. She had developed biological weapons specifically designed to target Council species, viruses and bacteria that attack their nervous systems, their respiratory systems, their immune systems. "Are we really going to use these?" asked her assistant. He looked disturbed by the rows of containment vessels in the lab. "Only if we have to," Nari said. The battle for Earth lasted 3 days. It was the most intense combat the galaxy had ever seen. The Council fleets, despite their losses on the approach, still outnumbered the human defenders. But numbers no longer mattered. The humans fought with a desperation and ferocity that shocked their enemies. Every ship was a weapon. Every soldier was willing to die to protect their home. The Council fleets learned what it meant to fight an enemy on their own ground. Earth's orbital platforms had overlapping fields of fire. The asteroids throughout the system were actually hidden fortresses. The moon bases that looked peaceful were military strongholds. Everywhere the Council ships went, they found weapons and warriors waiting for them. Admiral Kresh led his northern fleet against Earth's orbital defenses. His ships advanced in a tight formation, shields at maximum. He expected heavy resistance. He expected to lose more ships, but he believed that if he could just reach Earth's orbit, he could threaten the planet directly. He could force a surrender. He never made it. The orbital platforms opened fire. Railguns launched projectiles at incredible velocities. Missiles poured out of hidden launchers. Energy weapons that the Council had not known humans possessed lit up the void. Kresh's shields held for about 30 seconds. Then they began to fail. One by one, his ships were torn apart. "Fall back," Kresh ordered. "Regroup at the rally point." But there was no rally point. Human ships had cut off his retreat. He was surrounded. His fleet was being methodically destroyed. He watched his command ship systems fail one by one. Life support, engines, weapons. Finally, a railgun slug punched through the ship's reactor. The explosion was bright enough to see from Earth's surface. The Western Fleet, led by the Quilmar, tried a different approach. They sent in wave after wave of fighters and drones, thousands of small craft that they hoped would overwhelm human defenses through sheer numbers. It was a tactic that had worked for them for centuries. Overwhelm the enemy with disposable units while the capital ships moved in behind. But humanity had studied this tactic. They had prepared for it. As the Quilmar drones swarmed toward Earth, they found themselves flying through a maze of defensive fire and minefields. Point defense systems tracked multiple targets simultaneously. AI-controlled defense drones met them in combat and proved to be better pilots than the biological Quilmar. The swarm was cut down before it reached the inner defenses. The Quilmar capital ships tried to follow up their fighter attack, but without the screening force they were exposed. Human cruisers picked them off one by one. The Quilmar commander, a being called Hive Lord Zak, refused to retreat. His species did not retreat. They fought until the last drone fell, and so they did. The Western Fleet was destroyed completely. Not a single ship escaped. The Eastern Fleet had the most success. Their commander was smart enough to know when the battle was lost. After 2 days of fighting with half his ships destroyed, he ordered a retreat. The humans let him go. They had won. There was no need to chase a defeated enemy. When the third day ended, the space around Earth was full of wreckage. Thousands of destroyed ships from both sides. But the Council's offensive was broken. Of the 8,000 ships that had started the campaign, fewer than 500 escaped. And those ships carried stories that would spread across the galaxy. Stories of humanity's strength. Stories of the Council's defeat. On Earth, people celebrated in the streets. They had won. Their planet was safe, but in the command center, General Taiyang was not celebrating. He was planning the next phase. "We won the defensive battle," Taiyang said to his officers. "But the war is not over. The Council still exists. They still control most of the galaxy. If we stop now, they will rebuild. They will come at us again, maybe in 10 years, maybe in 100. But they will come. We need to end this permanently." "You want to take the war to them," Admiral Jiwan said. It was not a question. "Yes," Taiyang confirmed. "We need to occupy the Council homeworlds. We need to dismantle their governments. We need to make sure they can never threaten anyone again." There was silence in the room. What Taiyang was suggesting was ambitious. Humanity would go from defenders to conquerors. They would occupy alien worlds. They would impose their will on species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. "Is that what we want to be?" Hyun asked quietly. "Conquerors? Occupiers? We fought this war to resist tyranny. Are we now going to become tyrants ourselves?" "No," Taiyang said firmly. "We are going to be liberators. The Council has enslaved dozens of species. We will free them. We will not rule the galaxy. We will stabilize it, help it rebuild, and then we will leave. But first we need to ensure the old powers can never rise again." Over the next 3 months, human fleets moved through Council space. They met little resistance. The Council's military had been broken. Their infrastructure was in ruins. Most species surrendered without a fight when human ships arrived in their systems. Captain Soman led the ground forces that landed on the Vrakos homeworld. She expected fierce resistance. The Vrakos were proud warriors. But what she found instead was a broken people. They had lost their fleet. They had lost their empire. They had lost everything. Chancellor Vorn was found in his throne room. He had not run. He had not hidden. He sat on his throne and waited for the humans to come. When Soman's soldiers entered, he simply looked at them. "Kill me," Vorn said. "You have won. You have destroyed my empire. At least give me the dignity of dying as a warrior." "No," Soman said. "You do not get to die a warrior. You get to live and see what you created fall apart. You get to watch your people learn to live without slaves and conquest. You get to see the galaxy change. That is your punishment." Vorn was taken into custody. He would spend the rest of his life under house arrest, watching his world transform. It was, he would later admit, worse than death. The Quilmar homeworld fell without a fight. The hive structures that had coordinated their empire were destroyed. The drones became independent beings for the first time in their history. Some adapted, some did not. But they were no longer a threat to anyone. Across the galaxy, the old order collapsed. The Council was dissolved. The empires that had ruled for thousands of years were broken. And in their place, humanity began to build something new. Ambassador Hyun returned to the Council chamber. But now it was not a council of tyrants. It was a gathering of equals. Representatives from dozens of species sat together. Species that had been enslaved were now free. Species that had been oppressed were now represented. "This is the new Galactic Charter," Hyun said, holding up a document. "It is not perfect. Nothing created by living beings ever is, but it is better than what came before. It guarantees freedom for all species. It prohibits slavery and conquest. It establishes rules for trade and diplomacy, and it ensures that no single species can ever dominate the galaxy again. The representatives voted. The charter was approved. A new era had begun. General Taeyang stood on the observation deck of a space station orbiting Earth. He was old now. The war had aged him. He looked out at the stars and thought about everything that had happened. "We did it," Admiral Ji-won said, standing beside him. She was old too. They had both given their lives to this cause. "We freed the galaxy. For now," Taeyang said. "But freedom is not something you win once and keep forever. Every generation has to fight for it. We gave them a chance. What they do with it is up to them. Are you worried we did the wrong thing?" Ji-won asked. "No," Taeyang said. "We did what we had to do. The council was evil. They enslaved and murdered for thousands of years. Someone had to stop them. I just hope that 50 years from now, 100 years from now, people do not look at what we did and think we were just as bad." "They will not," Ji-won said with certainty, "because we are leaving. We are not staying to rule. We are not building an empire. We are going home, and that was exactly what humanity did. Over the next 10 years, human forces withdrew from occupied worlds. They helped establish new governments. They shared technology. They trained local defense forces. But they did not stay. They did not rule. Earth remained a major power in galactic politics. But it was one voice among many, not a tyrant imposing its will. The human military stayed strong, but it did not expand. Earth's borders remained the same as they had always been. The solar system and a few nearby colonies. Nothing more. The galaxy learned a strange lesson from humanity. Power did not have to lead to tyranny. Strength did not require conquest. A species could be the most dangerous thing in the galaxy and still choose peace. But they also learned another lesson. Do not threaten Earth. Do not mistake humanity's patience for weakness. Do not assume their kindness means they are defenseless. Because behind the peaceful facade, behind the diplomatic smiles, humanity was still the apex predator. They had proven it once. They would prove it again if necessary. Years later, a young alien student asked her teacher about the war. "Why did the Council attack Earth?" she asked. Did they not know humans were dangerous? The teacher, an old Vrakos who had lived through the war, shook his head. They knew humans were different. They knew humans had potential, but they made the same mistake so many before them had made. They assumed that because humans acted helpless, they were helpless. They thought humanity's desire for peace meant they could not fight. They learned the truth too late,